All right. So it's 1 o'clock. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez. It's one of our shortest musical openings ever. I don't even know if it qualifies as a musical opening because it's almost like background music. But it kind of fits in with today's show. And my guests are Stacey Chen, LMHC from LaGuardia's Wellness Center, and Emily Durand from Mount Sinai's SAVI Sexual Assault and Violence uh, interven. Sorry, I've got something in the way. Interventionary program, excuse me, who will be on to talk about keeping cool during the holidays. We're on right now a discussion on care and boundaries. Welcome. I'm sorry for my twist of the tongue there. I had some little thing over it. Did I say that right? Interventionary.
Intervention.
Intervention.
You're very close.
Okay. Apologies. Maybe I'll get it better during the station break in the finale. So welcome, and I told you both I would give you an opportunity to, in introduction, to talk a little bit about yourselves, your backgrounds before coming to LaGuardia and things like that, your studies. Who'd like to go first?
Stacey, I'm going to tag you.
Oh, you're on, Stacey.
So I've been at LaGuardia for almost 6 years now. I'm the mental health counselor at the Wellness Center, and I've actually been in college mental health for about a decade now. And before this, did some IT work in private and public sector. So for students who don't know what they want to do yet with their lives, good to know that you can always explore later on as well. So I've been a mental health counselor for about 10 years and have my master's in mental health counseling. So, and I enjoy my work here at LaGuardia.
So LMHC is licensed mental health counselor. And you're right. Most of our students think that what major they choose when they walk in the door, that's what they're stuck with for life, which is what's so stressful. But they usually change their major 6 times before they leave. So God knows what happens once they leave us. Emily.
I was going to say, believe it or not, I majored in economics, and then later on, counseling. Found my true calling later on.
As we do. Emily.
I was just going to say, it's so funny that you both bring that up because I changed my major 2 weeks into my senior year of college. So you have plenty of time to figure it out.
Yeah.
You can change your mind, go back and forth. But yeah, so I'm Emily. I am one of the program coordinators and community educators with SAVI, the Mount Sinai Sexual Assault and Violence Intervention Program. I'm relatively new to this role. I've been here since about May, but I've been in the field working in college and interpersonal violence prevention for about I guess 6 years now. Wow. I originally started at Syracuse University. I majored there in education, and I became a peer educator through my Office of Health Promotion. And I got really into the work of doing, helping promote healthy relationships and sexuality with students. And so I decided I wanted to do my career in that. And so I've kind of been an educator for about 3 years more formally. Before this, I was working at a YWCA out in rural communities, and now I'm here at SAVI and really excited to be working with Stacey and other folks on the LaGuardia campus to do some prevention education.
If Dr. Riccio had known that you were a Syracuse alum, should have gone off on a whole nother tangent about being a red person. Redman?
Well,
you're the Redman, right?
We'll have to talk about that later. I think it's orange.
Oh, no, that's all right. So who's Redman? Well,
yeah.
That's St. John's. See, I don't know anything about New York.
Yeah.
Tell us. So the SAVI program. Tell us. Yes, she just. Chris just chimed in. Chris is a big sports guy. If our Chris is our engineer who's behind the scenes. If he had his way, he'd be doing a sports show right now. But anyhow, tell us a little bit about SAVI, the genesis of that. Is this a brand new program, or is this something that's been going on for time?
No, so SAVI has been around for a little over 2 decades, I believe. And we provide a couple of different services. First of all, we serve Manhattan, Queens, and we're expanding into Brooklyn. And then I like to think of our services as having 3 tiers. So we provide education, of course, that's me, mostly working on college campuses, but we also have my really wonderful supervisor, Lindsay, working on within K-12 schools as well. We also provide emergency department advocacy through our volunteer advocate program. And so they are really wonderful. We have training every October for new advocates to join the team. And then our 3rd tier is free and confidential counseling. It is shorter term, somewhere between 12 and 16 sessions, but it is completely free for folks who might be interested. And Stacey and I have chatted before about how, you know, folks who leave college campuses, maybe they were seeing a clinician there and they're seeking a referral afterwards. We might be a good option for folks to go to. So that's part of our job.
Yeah, I see that it says violence intervention. Who's doing the intervening? Do you train people to do that, or are you the ones that are intervening?
So depends on how you look at intervention. So we have our advocates and our clinicians who kind of respond after the fact, after something has already happened. I'm more on the prevention end of this, where I do the education, talking about how do we develop healthy relationships, healthy sexuality. But then there are some programs who do intervention in terms of intervening with folks who perpetrate violence as well. I did that in my last position, but here we are more on the intervening to help survivors heal. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. My wife, who is also a LCMSW, is that right? Did I get that right?
Yeah,
LCMSW, is that the term? She's a LCS, yeah, she's a psychotherapist, but she's also a sexual assault survivor, and she wrote a memoir and has went on the road with it, and specializes in sexual assault survivors in her counseling, and which is pretty heavy work, if you can imagine. So I know a little bit about it, and has worked with RAIN. She's like raised money for RAIN and done things with RAIN. So, which is also in sexual assault. RAIN, I forgot RAIN stands for Rape,
Abuse, and Incest National Network.
Very good. Yeah, they do good work. Stacey, you want to talk a little bit about what you do on at the campus? I'm guessing is you're a counselor for mental health.
Yeah,
talk a little bit more
so the
about
bulk
that?
of my work is seeing students individually for counseling, now through Zoom, which actually works surprisingly well. I also coordinate at times workshops with organizations like SAVI. Also do crisis intervention on campus. So if there's an urgent need, all of us on staff as counselors, we're available, have on-call hours at times during the week, so students can always reach someone during our office hours. I think in working, I mentioned before that I've been in college counseling for, over a decade now, and I've really learned a lot from organizations like SAVI, and I think their work is so important, just like the work that your wife does, Hugo. Because as a counselor, I've learned how much interpersonal violence has to do with mental health issues. Mental health symptoms, issues, they don't just come out of nowhere, right? And interpersonal violence is such a big cause of symptoms of depression and anxiety, low self-esteem. So helping people to heal and doing this prevention work is so important. So during my time at LaGuardia, I've been, at times coordinating workshops with SAVI to promote awareness, because most people don't get this education anywhere. It's just so important to help our community to heal and to be healthy.
Yeah, we know that depression, it's the symptom to the bigger problems which usually our population of students struggle with a lot as a result of socioeconomic issues. So we probably have them in higher numbers than I'm just guessing, than let's say an Ivy League or something like that. So there must be plenty of work to be doing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I've worked in another college environment where it was more privileged and resourced, just the community. And at LaGuardia, I definitely see more trauma here. And often what students are coming in with or relate to past experiences that need healing. And a lot of interpersonal,
right.
Just either often related to things that have happened that should have never happened to them, or things that didn't happen that they needed, like nurture and comfort and care,
Right.
growing up.
Yeah, we talk about, when I've had folks on here before, most children die of neglect rather than abuse. At least the numbers are larger in the neglect area than as a result of abuse in many cases. Are you both full-time at the college as well?
So I'm full-time at the college, and Emily is with SAVI, so I believe it's full-time there.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
good.
full-time with SAVI, and I kind of spread my my purview across 6 different campuses in New York City.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun balancing act.
Yeah, I was going to say that's some ball bouncing. We originally were going to do a show on one particular subject, and we decided to change it for the holidays. That you wanted to focus on again these. Well, let's get it right. Keeping cool during the holidays. A discussion on care and boundaries, and I mean, it's what's interesting. Again, starting with Charlie Brown, and Charlie Brown Christmas special, by the way, is, when people ask, oh, what's your favorite Christmas special? And that was always mine as a kid growing up. And besides the fact that it was well made, is the fact that I identified with Charlie Brown. And as a kid growing up, I don't know what it is, an assumption or whether you're told that in the holidays, you're supposed to feel good. And that is not the average experience, right?
Absolutely.
So that's one of the reasons I wanted to start the show with this topic. So you want to talk about that, this idea of how as a society we put a lot of pressure on folks to they're supposed to feel good during the holidays?
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that it was really interesting that we brought up kind of numbers around, childhood trauma and things like that, because we get students who go to college for the first time, and maybe this is the first time that they're coming out of a situation that might have been causing harm or just been neglectful or whatever it may be. And so sometimes going home for the holidays, maybe this is their first time going back for the holidays, and this is also the first time going back into those stressful situations where maybe they had gotten a break from things like mismatching communication styles, or maybe they have different siblings that they have to take care of when they go home, or an elderly family member. Maybe they maybe when they go home they have if we're thinking about interpersonal violence or sexual trauma, maybe they're trying to avoid re-meeting that person, right? And so going home may not always be quite as exciting as we hope it will be, quite as good like Charlie Brown, and so I think if we can talk about boundaries a little bit more, then we can hopefully navigate the holidays in a way that where we can still enjoy them. Stacey, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah, one comment I'll make, Emily, is that actually a lot of our students are living at home. So as a community college, Some students are
Right.
already in their homes, and some homes are healthier than others. I think that's one thing that has impacted a lot of students during this pandemic and not being able to come to campus. But I just think this is such an important topic, Hugo. As you mentioned, there's pressure sometimes around the holidays to be happy and have a look a certain way and have the perfect family. And it's just, for most of us, that's not realistic, right? And in our Western society, in the United States, we tend to overly focus on just feeling the so-called positive emotions, right? Always being happy or comfortable, or not really knowing how to handle grieving and suffering or difficulty at times, being open to that. So I just think it's just so important, and for our population too, in particular, Hugo, I think a lot of our students tend to devalue their own needs, or they've learned to, right, set their needs aside and not put themselves first ever, right? So this topic of care around the holidays is so important, because I think it's really important for students to know what they need. Like, it's really about first knowing yourself and knowing, what is life giving to me? What do I want to happen this season? And what don't I want to happen? What do I desire? What don't I desire? And kind of knowing, Emily, you talk about a lot about this, just living life in line with your values. So
Absolutely.
I encourage, for students at LaGuardia, I just really encourage them during this time to take care of themselves during the holidays. And it doesn't have to look a certain way. You just have to know, what do you need? What is best for your unique situation? And then make plans in accordance with that.
Absolutely.
And so this work that you're doing, right, the care and the boundaries, is that something that you're doing with existing clients, or that you're introducing into workshops that you're currently running? Or is this something special that are you offering this as a special option for students who may take advantage of mental health services here at LaGuardia?
So while we don't have any specific workshops, to be honest, our workshops don't get great attendance at LaGuardia. Students tend to prefer individual counseling. But I do want students to know that we are open, through the break. So while faculty might be off on vacation, which you guys well deserve, Hugo, staff such as the Wellness Center, we're here, and we might be closed Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, but otherwise I'm going to be working, and there's going to be coverage in the office as well if needed. And students can still reach out to us and request individual counseling services.
It's interesting you talk about boundaries, we could probably do a whole show on boundaries, because I don't think I even knew that boundaries existed until sometime in my early 30s.
Yeah.
When all of my, we develop over time, we develop all these techniques of taking care of ourselves, which we develop on our own, whatever they are, and they take a lot of forms. I mean, sometimes they take the form of substance abuse, for example, or it could take just the way we interact with our families. But I never knew that, I could make a decision. For example, to not go home for a holiday, for example, if that were the choice, and maybe to find like an entire other group of people to call family for the holidays. And so I would guess that our students do not know this, especially when you live in New York City. You're living in small quarters. If you're living at home, and just from and I think a lot. One of the fascinating things that has been about the COVID crisis, right, or the COVID pandemic, is that faculty have gotten a small insight into the way people are their students live their lives, because that comes crashing in to the educational experience when they turn on their microphones, or they turn on their, and it's funny because faculty complain a lot about, we're looking at a lot of black boxes that are all muted, but the minute they turn them on, in comes this universe that our students are living in, where there isn't a lot of, ability to create personal space, which is not compromised. I mean, we're thinking just in terms of learning, but living emotionally is very problematic. But so this is, I mean, is this something? How do you do it? Do you talk to them in the workshop about this concept of boundaries, which most people have never even heard of in the early part of their life?
Yeah, absolutely. We even go through a definition of boundaries, which is basically, someone's limit or the extent to which they can go with a behavior or whatever it may be. And we do, like Stacey said, start with that values foundation. So we try to invite them to get really clear about what their values are. So is it connection? Is it independence? Patience? And so when we can think about a value like, okay, I really value connecting with my family. How can I achieve that goal? And so one way that we might do that is by trying to learn how to communicate really well with that family member, or maybe a family friend, or whoever is coming over for the holidays. So that way we can question, like have that question in the back of our mind, like, am I upholding this value with X behavior that I'm doing? Or am I getting really activated in this moment? How can I maybe realign with what I want to be doing? And so we do talk through specific communication strategies when we give some workshops on this. So things like how to give an apology. There's a really good Brene Brown podcast on this with Harriet Lerner, where they actually go through all the steps to an effective apology, and it's really helpful. But we also talk about specific boundary setting phrases, and how we can, what might be like some triggers for us during the holidays, what activates us the most about something that a family member or a friend, and what they might be saying a lot. As one example that comes up a lot is talking about like bodies and food and weight, and how difficult that becomes during the holidays when we're eating a lot of food. Maybe it's food that we don't usually get very often. And so people tend to make comments like, oh my gosh, I am going to go work out because I need to earn this meal. And so one boundary setting phrase that we can come up with is something like, oh, actually, I like really enjoy this food, so I'm just going to like enjoy it for the sake of enjoying it. Or if there's a comment on weight, someone could say, oh, I'm actually not accepting comments on my body at this time. And things like that. And I see you're laughing, Hugo. But like,
I was muted, but I I brought it back because you needed to hear the sound. But I love that.
Yeah.
We're accepting comments right now on my weight.
Yeah, just a really clear like, thanks, but no thanks, can be really impactful. Or one of my favorites, and I have yet to use this, I am going home for the holidays, so we'll see how this goes. But something like, oh, I hope you're not saying that to me because you think I agree with you. If someone is saying something like problematic, or like racist or homophobic, whatever it may be. So we try to talk about some specific phrases, have them bring, we can go through scenarios, but we also try to have them bring up their own specific things that they anticipate, their own specific problems, so that we can go through with students, okay, what is going to be specifically helpful for you? Because every situation is different. There's no one size fits all. But we do find that kind of using that disruptor, like, or like, oh, actually, or something like that can be really helpful to let people know that that was like not an okay thing to say. So there is a little bit of structure there.
Yeah, Stacey, is this easier to do with somebody you've been working with for a while? Because, I mean, people don't, a lot of times in the beginning, people don't know what drives them crazy about their families. So they have to figure out what is it, Emily's talking about, for example, talking about their weight. which interesting enough, I grew up. I was like a 99-pound weakling. I had a 28 waist until I was 28, and then slowly started gaining weight over the years. Now, of course, I'm overweight. My wife likes to call me obese, and so I completely identify with people who struggle with food issues. It's like, especially, and you're talking about now. Here come the holidays. I'm already overweight. How am I gonna enjoy myself? And but this is a big problem. I mean, obviously, I don't know whether I'm guessing men and women at this point both suffer, because there's a lot of heavy folks on both sides. But this is a major issue, and the holidays kick it up for everybody, right? But is this something like, when you're working with somebody for a while, you kind of know, you started to already figure out what their issues are, and they're in the case of Stacey, are you some things that you're going to say? Are you concerned about, people making comments about your weight? Are you concerned about people making comments about the way you're dressing now? Things like that.
To be honest, Hugo, often students are pretty forthcoming about their concerns and kind of bring them up to me, ones to, I find that when you create a space that's safe enough, right, for someone to share, they do talk about even vulnerable issues and sensitive things, for sure. And
Yeah, and I think like during a 1-hour workshop, I try to do things in the beginning to create a safer space where students feel a little bit willing to like workshop, what they want to work on. So we try to talk about, first we try to, do a fun like introductory question, like what's your favorite and least favorite thing about the holidays, or something along those lines. Or we get competitive about like, do you like X food or Y food more? Fight about it in the comments, like something fun to get them going. But relationship building can be a little bit more challenging, depending on how much time we are given, for sure.
With workshop, well, maybe it's the case. It's 1:29. I want to just do a quick station break. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia Web Radio WLGR. And my show today is with Stacey Chen, LMHC from LaGuardia's Wellness Center, and Emily Durand from Mount Sinai's SAVI program, which is Sexual Assault and Violence Prevention, Intervention program. I'll get it right by the end of the show. And we're talking about keeping cool during the holidays, a discussion on care and boundaries. I'm just realizing now that through the title, we're saying keeping cool. So we're referring to anger, right? Is that what we're referring to?
Sometimes, yeah.
Concern
Absolutely.
that people are going to blow up during the holidays. I mean,
it can be anger, frustration, maybe just anxiety. Absolutely.
So cool in many aspects, not just in
yes
temperature.
Keeping cool, trying to figure out how we can accomplish our goal of clear communication and boundary setting, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of my professors who I studied with in graduate school wrote a whole book on cool, which is a concept, a West African concept. And part of it is about, while everything is going on, all the things are happening around you, which could trigger anxiety. You don't, and you just, put on that face of, I got this, or whatever you want to, that kind of the mask of that you can handle it, which I think our students also struggle with coming out of, our communities, is they are kind of bombarded. It's not just in the home, it is also in their communities, where wherever it is, surrounded by violence, different kinds of attacks, bullying, and they've got to get tough and defend themselves from that kind of emotional abuse, and act as if it's not bothering them, but it is. And is that something that the two of you have to work through, where somebody shows up and they're telling you nothing's wrong,
Yeah,
and but it's coming out? Obviously, this comes out in other ways.
absolutely. And Stacey was there for a workshop where I kind of got that response from people like, "Oh, I didn't, sign up for this workshop for any particular reason. I don't have anything going on," and they try to keep cool. And we know that, like, actually, remaining trying to not get so activated is a learned skill, right? And we all have to get some really good practice in before we can get to that stage. But I think it's also important to remember that their feelings about whatever they're experiencing are incredibly valid, and there's ways that we can try to navigate those feelings and cope with them. And I'm sure that Stacey helps folks with that pretty often. That's the whole thing, right?
Yeah, Hugo, this is such an important topic, right? Just how we all develop ways of coping growing up, and often, such as, putting on our, like, sometimes it's called our armor, right? For protection, whether
Right.
it be protection from unhealthy family members or society at large, right? Dealing with some of the oppression and issues in our society. So, the way I look at it is just to be really affirming in that people have developed these ways of coping for good reasons, because when they were younger back then, they needed this armor to survive, right? So,
Right.
so it's really important, and we just want to honor that. And it is so sad that people needed to develop. We all needed to develop, right, certain ways of dealing with feelings or protecting ourselves. But now at this stage of life, often when I see a student, they are a young adult or older adult, right? At LaGuardia, we have people at different ages. And, at this point in life, when we keep using the same armor, um, sometimes it can get in the way now of connecting with others or connecting with ourselves, like our feelings, and that can just wreak havoc once we lose that connection with ourselves and others. So at this point in life, we might not need all that armor anymore. So part of my job is to help people to, be able to set aside some of that armor when it's safe and makes sense, and and to learn to become more connected with their feelings that allows them to connect more with others. And that's a big process of healing that is, very common in counseling and therapy.
Yeah, it's interesting because look, violence is one of the ways that people cope, right? They fight back, and obviously that's a problem in a educational setting. And when I ran after school programs, we'd have to explain to students. We'd have to say, you know, you can't, fight back in school. You can't hit somebody hits you, you don't hit them back in school, because you can't, you don't know what's going on in the world when they're going home and whatever, and we can't tell them what to do. That's something that they're going to have to figure out with their parents and things like that. But we could set rules within the institution and say, because here, if you get hit, you come to me, I get involved, and I take care of it. So there's creating this kind of, and sometimes I feel like that's a conversation we need to have with our college students as far as their coping skills, because again, if you let's say detachment is a way that people deal with whatever kind of stimulus they're getting from the community. In a classroom setting, a detached student isn't making any points for classroom participation. The one that's sitting in the back of the room who's not raising their hand, a teacher looks over there and says, like, okay, this student is not doing well. They're not a good student. It goes into really bad directions. But when you were talking about this armor analogy, right? Probably the best visual idea that came to me, as you said, is there's a film that Robert De Niro and Jeremy Irons made years ago about the Spanish and the Portuguese in Brazil when they were working with the indigenous people, and De Niro played a conquistador, fully armored conquistador who did something terribly wrong, and his penance was to drag his armor behind him, like in a net with a rope. And so at one point he's like climbing up the side of a waterfall, and the thing is about to pull him over. He's about to die, right? And one of these indigenous people, the Guari, which are like the indigenous people of Uruguay, comes over with a little knife and cuts it, and and that's the analogy that I think. And my wife is always telling me I'm dragging around ghosts and things. So that's, you can see why it hits me so hard. But again, it's like you're saying, all these coping skills that they have developed can have a negative effect when they're trying to progress in, let's say, in the scholastic community, but eventually in the, when they find themselves in the workplace and or interpersonal relationships after, they've moved on.
And it's just, I just want to say that it's so sad that, this armor is developed, but it wasn't the fault of the child, right? Or student, or,
right. No.
And it was just what they had to do to survive. And they really need help and safe environments where they, can start to feel more comfortable expressing feelings, and when it's safe. Yeah. So having professors like you, Hugo, who just have some understanding, actually, of
On a good day. On a bad day, I'm pissed off because all the boxes are black and nobody's talking. But,
Yeah, I do think, though, that with faculty and people teaching with some background and sensitivity to these concerns can make a difference in what's said in class and encouraging students.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the trick there is to find different ways to get them to interact, or else,
Absolutely.
to teach them that, they don't, that's not going to serve them anymore. That particular, checking out, kind of keeping quiet, not saying anything so that nobody sees you. And, some of our students, in fact, don't even like to, as I say, don't like to let everybody know they're smart, because they feel, because in the past they've been picked on because, hey, you're making us look bad. Don't give all the answers, that kind of stuff. Go ahead, Emily.
I was just going to say, Stacey, yeah, that one of the first lessons I learned when I was doing learning to give workshops and presentations was, if someone's checking out, they're probably doing it for a reason, and so we never required, even before the pandemic, we never required people in person to participate. We were never going to say, especially because like my topics tend to get pretty heavy, right? We're talking about sexual violence, and we know that somewhere between 1 in 4 and like 1 in 10 people, depending on gender and a lot of other factors, have experienced interpersonal violence. And so we would say, if you need to check out, go to the bathroom, check your phone, scroll, whatever you need to do to like get through this and maybe get something out of it. We totally support that. And so now, if I see a black screen, I'm like, okay, how can I adjust this presentation? Maybe a lot of times I'll make the chat completely private so that people are only messaging me. And then I get a little bit more engagement that way, because I can say, I think people feel just a little bit safer, especially if, that's the only way that we're like so-called seeing you show up for a presentation, if you don't decide to turn on your screen or whatever it may be. And so there's usually some kind of like reason behind that. And so we try to adapt for that in our workshops.
I was going to say, the hardest thing I think I ever had to learn about boundaries, and I think that people struggle with, is this notion that you can set a boundary and, you can also take care of the feelings of the person who you're setting the boundary, to protect yourself from. If you know what I'm saying. It's like, telling your family, I'm not coming home for the holidays, and then trying to make them feel okay with that, even though they're going to be upset. There's no way to do that. Is that something that our students struggle with, is like taking care of themselves while also having this desire to not make anybody upset? Stacey or Emily, either one, excuse me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if Stacey wants to answer that, but I know that we talk about this a lot in the context of rejection, but I think it also applies here where we're thinking like, okay, if someone doesn't have, active safety concerns, and it's more like, I need to sit in the discomfort of their whatever emotion this person is experiencing on the other end of this boundary, like that's the worst thing that can happen, is just sitting with their discomfort and acknowledging it. And so we can say like, we can literally have students say something like, yeah, I see that, like maybe it's the first time they're setting a boundary around something at home, and that student might say, I know that I haven't, really cared about this in the past, and that I care now, and that can be really confusing. And then that's it. Like, they just sit with whatever that person's feeling. Maybe they feel confused, maybe they feel a little upset, and say, I see that you're a little bit upset. So saying that, like, I see statement and acknowledging that other person's feeling can hopefully help keep that relationship intact, because that's kind of the ultimate goal, right? If people are setting a boundary, their goal is to still have some kind, depending on the context, usually it's still to have some kind of relationship with this person that is healing and can grow from wherever it is. But Stacey, I don't know if you wanted to respond to.
Yeah, I setting boundaries when you're doing it for the first time or just starting, Hugo, as you mentioned earlier, not learning till you were an adult, that's so normal, unfortunately, right? Most of us don't learn what boundaries are until later in life. And definitely there can be the fear of, well, how is this person going to react, right? And that's where it's so important to have support when you're doing it, whether it can be, from a counselor or friends or other people who support you in your life, that when you're setting boundaries, they can support you in dealing with some of the consequences or feelings that may come up that you're not responsible for. I found, it's people can also just, I think, find it really empowering once you kind of get into beginning to set boundaries. It can be really, really empowering, and I think contribute to a sense of self-worth and respect, because we all have that right to set boundaries with others, and it's healthy and good.
Yeah, I mean, and also once you set them, you have to defend the boundary, so to speak, because you can set it. That doesn't mean anybody's going to, accept it, and so you have to reinforce it. And it's interesting, but you say that. I think people have set boundaries with me in the past, and it gives you the person who the boundary is set on an opportunity to look at their own behavior and say, okay, I have to look at this, or I am, I talk too much, I'm the center of attention, whatever it is, whatever the issue is. Those are just easy ones I can grab out of the air. But I'm just so this is if that was the only thing they ever got out of college, learning how to set boundaries, it would be well worth the money. That's what I would have to say. By the way, we're at the last quarter hour of the show, and I'm looking at the Twitch stream. There are folks watching, but there are no questions being asked. Dr. Riccio, who's listening in, will try to text me some questions if anybody asks. But in the absence of questions, I would ask you about the future. This is something, obviously, that you're focused on to get our students through the holidays, and it's important to be doing. What are you going to move on to in the new year? Is there anything that either with SAVI or with counseling at LaGuardia?
Yeah. So I think I know on my end, I'm planning to meet with a couple of folks from the Wellness Center to talk about programming for the spring, especially during Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which is in April. I think we're potentially interested in doing some work around relationships and communication. Potentially, sometimes there's interest in bystander intervention workshops or information on Title IX. We do a lot of different topics. Another one is around consent, which we tend to kind of wrap into the topic of relationships. And so there will be plans in the works, and you can look out to Stacey, who I think can talk a little bit about where you can find where that information will be in the future.
Yeah, definitely, Hugo. And the Wellness Center will be advertising in the new year what new programming, specifically, I think, for spring semester. In March, there'll be, I think, some new programming happening. But, as I mentioned earlier, most popular with the Wellness Center and our students is individual counseling. And I want students to just know that we continue to provide this, service for students, and they can definitely feel free to reach out. And
it's free, and they're entitled
that's
to
right.
it.
That's right.
They pay for it.
Exactly, Hugo. College is one of the best times to engage in counseling because it's free and it's easily accessible. Right now, we're providing students with up to 16 sessions per academic year. And we also help them connect with off-campus services when that's helpful for something longer term. So definitely just want to encourage students to reach out if they need to, and we're here and available.
And
it was,
sorry. I just wanted to add one other plug, if I may. If people are, I believe, 21 and older, I'm not sure exactly what your student demographic is, but they can participate in our advocate training. And SAVI is looking to have another one in the spring, as well as next October. So if someone is interested in volunteering with our emergency department to support survivors of sexual violence and intimate partner violence, they can feel free to keep a lookout for that and sign up for that training.
Yeah, according to our institutional profile, I think the average age is a 21-year-old. And since we're an HSI, I would guess it would be a Hispanic, and usually women are the largest. So basically a 21-year-old Hispanic woman is the average LaGuardia student. Do you do any of your work with, do you guys collaborate with the Women's Center, who we've had on in the past? Dima Bayagdar's folks?
Yeah, actually in April, we're planning to have Emily back, and Dima and I have talked about doing that together. We co-sponsored in the past, and definitely have a relationship. Dima's also done some work with our center. Nathan's done some training with the Safe Hub. So we definitely collaborate.
Yeah, and if you're interested, you can come back on this show for in April. I wanted
Absolutely.
to say what are we calling that month? We don't call it National Sexual Assault Month. That's not what we're calling it.
Sexual Assault Awareness Month, or
Bingo.
SAM
that sounds a lot
is
better.
The acronym.
My wife will kill me.
I think adding awareness makes it a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Keep it on the positive. Well, this is important work, and again, things that I think the average student is not going to avail themselves of this necessarily without having resources like yours. So this is good work to be doing, and I just think it's. How are we getting this out to them, as far as how are we getting the message to our students that they could take advantage of this? I mean,
we have marketing staff. We have I think pandemic funding, we've been able to have a part-time staff who works on marketing for the Wellness Center. So she works with student affairs to do the marketing that we're able to do on campus through their venues, whether it be through social media, I think, LaGuardia website or other means. We also try to get the word out through professors such as yourself, Hugo, who really value the work at a wellness center. Professors play a huge part in connecting students with us, whether it be talking about us or referring students specifically. So that kind of partnership really helps a lot too.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, we also try to, when we have digital flyers, we promote on our Instagram page at Mount Sinai SAVI, as well as we are looking to do a newsletter in the coming year that's more focused. We already have an advocate newsletter, but we are planning to have one more focused on educational offerings. So hopefully that will also help kind of supplement what the really amazing work that Stacey is doing with the Wellness Center.
And we're in peculiar times because the stressors have never been greater, but at the same time, there's a disconnect as a result of 70% of our interaction with students is again through Zoom, and unless somebody's every once in a while I get a student who's struggling, usually with an assignment, and I'll ask if there's anything else I can do, and I don't. They may avail themselves or not. There's probably other people that are better. I know that they're different faculty where the people are just predisposed to open up to them. I have a colleague, Jessica Bowman, who I always make fun of her because she has like this, she lights her office with lamps, and I tell her she must be like the granny lighting because people go in there and cry almost every time she talks to them. And, I never get anybody, nobody cries in my office, but which again could be, hey, what's going on? Is there something I can do for you? So I have had situations where students in, the online journal entries, if it's something that is not necessarily shared, where they have opened up and have tried to get folks counseling on those occasions. That's a rare. There's a little trick I used to use in the beginning to try to create some compassion in myself about my students, which I think you probably know about. You ask your students, I wish my teacher knew. You finish that sentence, and I mean, when we were face to face, they just put it on a piece of paper and give it to me. Now I can do that through, in Blackboard as an online journal entry, as long as it's private, or even a chat that they could send me. And you never know what you're going to get. And something most students, again, in this armor that I'm fine, everything's, I don't know why you're asking this question, but once in a while you'll get somebody who's in a place where they're prepared to share a concern that they think you may need to know. Hey, I'm a single mother. I work a lot. I may fall behind, but I will try to keep. And those end up being your best students anyway. That's what's kind of fascinating. The ones who know they're struggling are the ones that take the extra effort to succeed.
Hugo, I just want to encourage you and any staff or faculty who might listen to this show that you can also just make blanket statements to your students, to your classes about wellness center services, or just acknowledging the importance of emotional health. We're all human. We all need support at times. There's shame in it. And just really sending a positive message around seeking out support and counseling. And I think that goes a long way. Students look up to professors, right, at times, and you can have an important influence in that way, and just speaking positively about mental and emotional health, letting them know, we're all human and that it's okay. Like, don't go it alone.
Right.
Yeah, especially during this, pandemic, which is kind of like this background trauma for all of us, right? So yeah, I echo what Stacey says about normalizing.
By the way, we have one comment, which is thanking you for the work you're doing and the critical work you do, and saying it's more important now than ever. And but we're actually almost out of time. I wanted to give the two of you an opportunity to say any last thank yous or shout outs before we finish up here. Who would like to go first?
I'll go. I think just thank you, Hugo and Stacey, and everyone else at the station for having me and talking about this really important topic, especially just before the holidays. I just hope that students feel empowered to, reach out when they need to, and hopefully they can look to some SAVI workshops in the future as well.
And Hugo, just coming back to this topic of care during the holidays, just really want to encourage students that as they have this winter break, at least a couple of weeks for students, right, to really take time to consider what you need. Take time to consider what you value. What do you want from these next couple of weeks when you're on break? What people are life-giving to you and who drains you or is toxic. Just being aware and then making decisions that help take care of yourself. That's my biggest encouragement to students. And to reach out to the Wellness Center if you need support. If you on LaGuardia's website, if you just Google Wellness Center, all of our information is there. And our office is going to be open for most days.
All right, so we're going to have to leave it there because we're running out of time. I just want to thank my guests today for being on the show, Stacey Chen, LMHC from LaGuardia's Wellness Center, and Emily Durand from Mount Sinai SAVI, Sexual Assault and Violence Intervention Program. We've been talking about keeping it cool during the holidays, a discussion on care and boundaries. And this is our finale for the Fall 1 session of 2021. It's been a wild ride, and I want to thank my engineer in the deep background there, Christopher Pope, and our station director, Dr. Jamie Riccio, who mans the Twitch stream. And I think she's texting me one last thing. She says there's an echo. I don't know what it's from, but I'm going to be off soon enough. And thank you for listening, for watching here on LaGuardia Web Radio, WLGR. What's going on? Have a restful break and holiday as best you can. Take care of yourself. Self-care. Without self-care, everything else falls apart. So take care. And Mr. Pope, take us out as we came in today. Thanks for watching and listening.